morning, Glenda Morris. Glenda is from Central Coast Tenants Advice and Advocacy Service. That's a mouthful, so they call themselves CCTAA. It's an easy way. So, Glenda's here to talk about the tenants' rights and property side of things. And Glenda, I'm not going to steal any more of your thunder. I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank
you.
you.
There you go.
We actually call ourselves CCTAS as opposed to New TAS and Western TAS and all the rest of it. I was talking this morning, we are a very small organisation on the coast. There's 3 full-time workers, and full-time we work Monday to Thursday, and 1 part-time worker who works 2 days a week doing admin. We are funded off the interest made on tenants' bonds. A lot of people don't realise there's about $60 million sitting in the government's coffers at the moment from bonds. The interest from that is divided up, and a very small portion goes to TAS services. The rest is divided between roads and hospitals and all the rest of it. So the government even grabs that. And we who are there to be paid by tenants, to work for tenants, get the smallest portions, but that's all right. I guess today what I need to just speak about, is anyone here a tenant? 1, 2, 3, good. And look, hopefully today some of the information I can give you, even if you're a homeowner and you don't particularly need it to take it on board for yourself, certainly you may have a son or a daughter who's renting, a parent who's renting, a sister or brother. It's just information sometimes that you can keep in the back of your head, and if they come up against a brick wall, you think, well, that's not really right, and there is an agency you can ring and you call. To cover through, this is the Residential Tenancy Act, as small as it is, and if it's not in there, then it doesn't happen, it doesn't occur. Agents sometimes, when you sign an agreement to move in, will put in some different clauses, you know, and you must get the floors shampooed when you leave, and you must not smoke in the house, and you must do all of these things. That's actually called contracting out of the Act. You cannot ask a tenant to do anything that's not written in here, and nowhere in here does it say a tenant shall shampoo the carpets when they leave. Nowhere in there does it say a tenant cannot smoke in the premises. So in other words, a tenant can smoke and a tenant doesn't have to get the carpet shampooed. However, it does say that the property shall be left as near as possible to when you entered, allowing for fair wear and tear, and it does speak about damage. So yeah, you can smoke, go for your life, but when it's time for you to leave, someone, and it's going to be the tenant, is going to pay for the yellow nicotine walls, the carpets that are now, stink of smoke, the curtains that stink of smoke. So while it doesn't say you can't do it, it'll get you on other areas that make sure that you'll pay for it if you do. There is a lot of real estates on the coast, and I'm not sure how many of you here today may be a real estate agent. Some are not great. Having said that, some tenants are not great also. But our job is to take instructions from our tenant and work with that. Things like, if a tenant receives a notice of termination and it'll have a vacant possession date on it, you do not have to leave by that date. And some agents will ring you up, you've got to be out, why aren't you out by the 24th? I'm going to bring the sheriff in, I'm going to bring the police around, you're squatting, rah, 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 rah. No, you're not. And it doesn't even matter if the tenant is in arrears. There is nobody except the sitting member at NCAT, which is the New South Wales Civil and Administrative Tribunal, with the power to tell you what date you have to leave that property by. So if you are a landlord, if you know a landlord, if you want your tenants out, be aware there is a process to follow. There is certain time limits. You can give your tenant 30 days for an end of fixed term. You can give your tenant what's called a 90 days no grounds. You can give your tenant 14 days for a breach. Other than that, you can't give them anything. So it's got to fit within one of those categories. 90 days it's good in a lot of ways. It gives the tenant 3 months to find somewhere else. During that 90 days, though, the landlord needs to be aware that the tenant can leave with as little as 24 hours notice. So if they want to go, they've gone. Agents ring up, why haven't you returned the keys? You're supposed to be out. And it's just so infuriating. And I actually did a talk yesterday, and there was a couple of landlords there, and one said to me, it would make my life so much easier if they just left on the day they were asked to. And I said, and would it make your life easier if that was your mother or your son or your daughter in that home who had 14 days to vacate, didn't have a bond, didn't have anywhere else to go? All of a sudden your child's living under a bridge or in your spare bedroom. So, think about it for a while. Tenants don't have to be out. I'm just going to touch on a few of the things around. For a tenant to be in arrears, they need to be 14 days or more before their landlord can take action against them in the tribunal. They will serve them a notice for rent arrears. There's two types of rent arrears. Realising that bad things happen to good people, and for that reason they fall into arrears. There's two kinds. There's under Section 88 and under Section 89. It's been written in, if you get served under Section 88, that means that if you can pay that rent up before the tribunal, if you can go to the tribunal and pay that rent up or enter into a payment plan, that all disappears. It's gone. Doesn't belong anymore. Member won't hear the matter. It's all over and done with, and you're back to square one. If, however, they serve you under an 89, that means you're a chronic payer, a chronic late payer. So you've paid, you've been in arrears on and off, and your landlord's over it. That won't save you. You can pay it up on the day, you can offer anything you like, but the landlord doesn't have to save you under that section. And I think it's good, because I think there is tenants who need to realise, their landlord has a mortgage to pay. While I'm a tenants advocate, and I'm certainly about tenants, we certainly are fair. And I was saying this morning, some tenants ring us up and we don't tell them what they want to hear. They expect that because we're an advocate, we're going to tell them a way to get around this, or a little lie we could do to get out of this, or what can we say that didn't really happen. And it's not going to happen from us. We work within this. We'll do everything we can to support you as long as it falls within this. And as long as we're not just getting taken for a ride, and we do realise when we're getting taken for a ride. There is some difficult matters. We will represent at the tribunal when it's a difficult matter. We need to tell tenants from the time we walk in, member will call your name and that of the other party. When you say present, I would then say, member Glenda Morris, Central Coast Tenants Advice, seeking leave to represent. Once that leave is granted, member will no longer talk to the tenant. And tenants find that difficult. They feel almost like they're no longer important. But member can't go, oh, Ms Morris, Ms Smith, Ms Morris, Ms Smith. He doesn't do that. So he will say to me, and he will direct it, Ms Morris, are you aware of that? Ms Morris, do you have that bit of paper? Ms Morris, have you seen this paperwork? I can certainly say to the tenant, have you got that? Have you seen that, or whatever? But he will no longer speak to the tenant. It becomes all about me. But I don't have to suffer the consequence. So we can try and work to the best we can. With housing, there's a thing called a first appeal, a second appeal, and a hack appeal. We're put in the first tier appeal. If we fail on that to get him back, I will then lodge a second tier appeal. If that fails, I will then go a hack appeal. A hack appeal is a committee of people who do not work for housing. They are independent people who, while their decision is not you have to do this housing usually do what their decision is. So they can listen to it from an unbiased point, they can see what I'm saying, they can see what housing is saying, and it's up to them to make a conscious decision. Once you're the tenant, you are responsible for everything that goes on in that home. Doesn't matter whether you're party to it or not, you are held responsible. Repairs for tenants. If you have a repair that's needed in your home, you write to your agent. Please don't ring them. Please don't, because it'll come to the point where they say, can't actually remember that call. Don't think you rang me. Must have rang somebody else. If you write to them, email them, you've got the proof that you wrote. You write and you outline what the repair is that's needed. Everything under the Residential Tenancy Act works on timeframes. So you then give your landlord a timeframe in which to repair. Now, if you need the backyard dug up for drainage, you're probably going to give him longer than if you need a tap fixed in the kitchen, okay? So whatever it is, give them what you consider to be an appropriate. I usually think 10 working days is enough, especially if they already know about it. If your landlord fails to repair in that time frame, from the next day, you then have 28 days to make application to the tribunal for repairs to the property. If it's things like a water leak, you will also argue the fact that you're not paying the full water bill next time. Why should you pay something for a leaky tap that he hasn't fixed? I'm not saying don't pay your water bill, and I would say to the agent, I will pay the same as what I paid last water rates, but anything above and beyond that I'm not paying. Probably a quick note to stick in here too. There's a lot of little granny flats now going up in the back of a lot of homes, and we've always had them for years. Half of them aren't legal, but I don't care as long as the tenant's got somewhere to live. Please make sure if you're ever talking to anyone in that situation, or if you happen to be a landlord, that both properties are separately metered for power and for water. If they're not, your tenant pays no power and your tenant pays no water. So, just be very aware of it. If you've got a, brother or a sister or a young son or daughter that are going into a granny flat situation, or even if they're going into the house at the front and there is a granny flat, just tell them to double check that there is power. And I'm even meaning, say you get a house and the agreement is for the property but not for the double garage up the back because the landlord comes there and does whatever the landlord does there. That's fine. The minute the landlord walks into that garage and flicks on a light or starts up a power tool or turns the tap on to wash his hands in that garage, you don't pay your power and you don't pay your water, because there is no formula to divide them, right? All right, the lady next door's got 5 kids and I've got 2, so she probably washes more than me and she'd use more water than me or more power. How can you tell? You can't. So when you can't divide it, when there's no legal way to divide it, nobody pays, except the landlord, if the landlord's silly enough. But getting back to repairs, you give your landlord notice of what the repair is, you give your landlord a time frame in which to repair, and you then take him to NCAT if he fails to repair. The big scare is going to be, will he give me a notice of termination if I go after these repairs? Maybe. I can't promise you that he won't. He may hit you with a 90 days because he doesn't want to do the repairs. They're too expensive, so it's easier to get rid of you. So my question comes back to the tenant. How long are you prepared to pay this money to this man every week, realising that he doesn't care and he's not going to repair and he's going to allow you to live in this home as it is? And, how long are you going to do that for? Are you going to keep paying him $500 a week for a house where you've got, no window or no bathroom or anything like that? So sometimes you've just got to bite the bullet and do it. I know we had a tenant and she had a great list of things that needed doing. So she sent it off to the landlord and the agent, and the agents were a husband and wife team. The tenant got a text from the female agent, which she had intended to send to her husband. And the text read, "The bitch has got a wish list a mile long, time we flicker." And that's what they do. They'll step in and give a notice of termination, get rid of the tenant. The tenant moves, bring in new tenants. "Hi, how are you? The flat's fabulous. You won't have a problem with it." As soon as that tenant starts to get upset about the repairs and things that are needed, the cockroach infestation, the lights don't work, the power points that are hanging off the walls, they'll get flicked. I'm not saying that's every landlord. We do have landlords that go in and repair and do the right thing, but it is a majority of landlords that will do that. You've got to understand the rent roll is where the agent makes his money. Agents will pay up to $1 million for a good rent roll. Doesn't mean the houses are good, it just means that there's a lot of tenants. So $1 million, they're going to make sure they're going to recoup that money. And how do they recoup it? They recoup it by their weekly money from the landlord, who pays them to look after that property. The last thing the agent wants to do is be ringing the landlord every week. "Oh, number 16 needs a new window. Hi, it's me again. Number 16's, there's a trip hazard with the carpet it needs to replace. Oh, hi, it's just me again. Number 16's got water leaks, rah, rah, rah." The landlord eventually is going to say, "Look, I'm flicking you guys. I'm going to go to another agent who gives me a bit of space. I can't afford this. I just can't afford it." So a lot of times they won't even tell the agent. The landlord, I'm sorry. And I've been at tribunal and seen a landlord down there, $3,500 worth of repairs and $1,500 compensation, and it was listed as due to his knowledge of, yet his failure to repair the breach. And what that means is he'd been told about it, or the agent had been told, and he still hadn't done it. And they won. And this man knew nothing about it. So my advice to him was, you take your agent to the tribunal and you recoup the money from them. You know, agents will sometimes say, oh, we have to get instructions. We don't know. That's a lie. Agents work, they sign an agreement at the beginning with their landlord. They have the power to say yes or no. You wouldn't believe how many landlords on the Central Coast are overseas as we speak. That's just where they spend their life. The tenant rings up, oh, the agent can't get hold of the landlord because he's overseas. Sure he is. There must be an annual landlords convention somewhere. Every landlord goes over there together, so no poor bugger gets anything done back here on the Central Coast. We are the mould capital of the state. There's a thing called a withdrawal of service. What that is if you rent a home and all of a sudden you don't have something in that home that you could use. Dishwasher, aircon, pool pump so you can't use the pool, mould in a room so you can't use the mould, leak in a bathroom or an ensuite so you can't use that. That is a withdrawal of goods, services or facilities, and you are entitled under the Act to seek rent reduction for that. The rent reduction would be according to what the withdrawal was and how important it was. If it was your aircon and it was the only source of heating that you had in the home, and particularly if you have smaller children in the home, yeah, you could probably seek about $70 to $80 a week. I'm not saying you're going to get that, I'm just saying you can seek it on your application. I tell everybody, the day you move in, fill in your ingoing inspection report, and there's tiny little squares that you can write in. Don't worry about those, take other bits of paper. But when you take it back to the agent, make sure the agent acknowledges by signing off that they received these papers. The amount of times you get to tribunal and the agent goes, I never got those papers. Don't know anything about them, sorry. So once you've got them on paper that they've signed off for them, they can't deny them. Take overkill of photos. In today's digital age, it doesn't matter how many you've got. When you're leaving, take pictures of everything. Get stat decks of anybody who comes into that house to help you clean or tidy or move. Just everything, because once you go and hand the keys back, you can't get back in there and that landlord can say whatever they want in order to try and get your bond. I had a young mum, I gave her this advice and she did it. She had 3 small children. Then the landlord came after $3,500 for repainting the unit because the children had drawn all over the walls in Texter. Fortunately, she had photos. All he'd done was he'd drawn on the walls in Texter. This place needs a paint anyway, might as well go to the tenant for it, so I'll do a few things and she's going to have to pay for it. She had the pictures, she had stat decks, so he didn't win and she did. So please tell anyone you know, make sure you've got an overkill of photos. Make sure you do your own outgoing. The tenant has a right to be at the outgoing, however you will find that the agent will go, yeah mate, yeah, we'll do it next Tuesday and about 11 o'clock. Then you'll get a call Monday. Oh, I had a cancellation, I was in the area, so I went and did that outgoing. Don't you worry about it. All good, princess. And then you get what we call the wish list. And it's like 3 pages of things that the agent wants you to do. And it's like, no. And tenants will say to me, Glenda, what's good enough? What's acceptable? And I say, if I was leaving a tenancy, I would clean it to the point where I thought, yeah, this is nice. I'm not ashamed to say that I lived here and this is how I left it. And that's how I would walk out the door. So if you can do that, do it. If you're a tenant, you need help. If you know a tenant and they need help, please give us a call. I do have some little bags here, Jeff, if everyone wants to have one. You're very welcome to call us at any time.